welcome to this, I believe, the 37th episode, or possibly 36th episode, can't really remember. We've done so many of these, of The Road to Glory. Today's going to be a little bit of a different episode as we complete one of the objectives. And my plan was to basically talk through a very relevant news topic that has happened very recently, and very relevant to the episode as well. So if you find that I'm not looking at the camera as much, it's because I'm trying to focus on the game, and even though I'm only playing at a lower level just to complete this objective, I'm not good enough to actually not pay attention to the game. Specifically because there is a specific thing I need to do, which is this. Okay, so I don't need to focus anymore. But I do want to score at least 5 goals to get maximum points and coinage out of this game. So I think we should start off by talking about how the series is going and where we're going to be moving on to. So I see that in the SBCs there's a new Jimenez, and he may very well play in my team. Reason for that is he would allow me to use Team of the Season Oblak, and I really don't like using Team of the Season Neuer. There's just something about him that makes him let in many more goals than his 96 rating would suggest. Alongside this, we're also going to be trying to complete all the squad battles. So next week's episode is actually going to be a collection of the other cards I've completed, because then it's going to be very boring to watch me complete squad battles, because the ones I have to complete are the ones in the one league friendlies. So on to the more relevant aspects of this episode. So as you may have already seen, I'm not going to show an image of it or video because it can be a little bit disturbing for some of you. Christian Eriksen is recovering well, thankfully, in the hospital, but he collapsed during the match against Finland, and it was very sudden. And I think a lot of you and a lot of people in general may remember people like Muamba, who also collapsed very suddenly. Now these are athletes who are very, very cardiovascular. Like when you say someone like, who do you think has a good cardiovascular system, top flight football players would probably be fine near the top. They have to run around for 90 minutes, they cover lots of ground, and conversely, that might be one of the reasons why they're actually at more risk of the likely diagnosis. Now, I'm not his physician, I don't know his medical records, and he deserves the privacy like we all do as patients. So I'm not going to read into it more, but I'm going to hypothesize that he has this condition called HOCM. Now, what is HOCM? So HOCM stands for hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy, and it's a condition where essentially your cardiac muscles, so your heart muscles, grow disproportionately, or grow, how to phrase this, it grows incorrectly. I'm going to link a video, and it's explained by a cardiologist, and that's a much better explained video than what I'm going to do. But essentially what it means is that patients with, or people with this condition essentially develop, they often undergo training, or that it's just genetics, and their heart muscle grows bigger. Now you normally think bigger muscles is better. Not necessarily the case, especially when muscle growth is uncontrolled or in the wrong places. And so this is a condition where muscles often grow in the wrong place, and this is often the septum, so the middle of the heart, or the left ventricle, which is the part of the heart that pumps the blood out. And when this happens, and it goes beyond the controllable level, you start getting problems such as arrhythmia. What an arrhythmia is essentially an inappropriate firing of the electrical signals that control the heart. And that can, or things such as sudden blows to the chest, abnormal basal tone. So for example, if you're undergoing very high stress, your body might go into a fight or flight response, and that might cause you to have this arrhythmia or a collapse. And like I said, counterintuitively, people who are athletes often undergo training to build their heart muscles up. So what you would do as somebody who goes for athletic training is you would try and stress your heart and stress your body to increase what we call stroke volume. Now, stroke volume is the amount your heart is able to fill when it's relaxed, called the diastolic phase, and then how forcefully it can contract and force that muscle out. Now, in older patients, this is often they're trying to compensate for being a bit older and having to force this blood through their cardiovascular system, which is a bit stiffened through old age, and so the heart dilates, and instead of being able to pump very strongly, they've got an old person's heart, so it's not able to pump very effectively, so they just end up with what we call dilated hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. I don't think this is the case in this situation. In HOCM, because if you imagine that you're trying to optimize the shape of your heart, the amount of muscle and the amount of volume you're able to pump out. But your heart is also getting a signal from your body, especially if you keep putting it under stress, that it needs to be a bit bigger. And if that isn't built correctly, or your body doesn't assign the growth correctly, and it's debatable whether or not this is the mechanism, but again, like I said, we're hypothesizing here. Then what will happen is your heart grows too much cardiac muscle mass in the septum or the ventricle, and this, instead of filling correctly when it's relaxing, isn't able to fill correctly. So this reduces what we call your diastolic function. So obviously when your heart is relaxing, your body still has blood pumping through it. Alongside this, your body might suddenly detect, oh, there's something going wrong here, like we're not feeling correctly, and then an arrhythmia will occur. And what an arrhythmia is essentially your heart is controlled by electrical signals. And if you imagine that these electrical signals are like instructions, okay, relax now, pump now, and so on. If these go wrong, your heart starts pumping incorrectly, and this can cause you to go into sudden cardiac arrest, which is what happened. Now, there's a lot of questions currently about why did the medical staff not immediately start CPR. Now, normally in the medical field, you're taught that speed saves lives. What that means is when you see somebody deteriorating, the faster you take action, the higher the likelihood of them surviving. But there was a couple of minutes before the medical team actually went onto the field and started performing CPR. Now what you're doing in CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, is you are simulating the heart. You're not actually essentially bringing them back to life. What you're doing is you're trying to take the place of their heart manually, which is why it's not always successful, and also why you have to appreciate how hard your heart actually works. Because if you imagine the amount of effort when you've watched TV shows, or if you've actually seen someone do CPR, it's very tiring, and you're simulating this tiny like fish-shaped muscle. And so essentially that's what CPR is for. Now what I've heard is apparently from the medical staff, or the medical staff member who was attending to Eriksen on the field, was that initially he still had a pulse. So the standard approach to somebody who is deteriorating in hospital, and you can take this all into your daily lives as well, is what we call the, so this is taught in St John's Ambulance in the UK, as well as BLS, which is basic life support, which is SADCDE, or danger response, essentially. So what you do is you look out for danger to yourself. So for example, if you're in an environment where it was very dangerous, it's your first priority, although this might sound very self-serving, it's your own safety. You need to make sure that the environment is safe for you. What you don't want to do is, for example, not see that there is glass all over the floor. So let's say somebody's gone into a heart attack and shattered whatever bottle they were holding, and now they've dropped glass all over the floor. What you don't want to do is not recognize that, then step on that, and then you've got a massive bleed, and now we've got two people that we need to look after rather than one. So you're actually creating more trouble in that situation. Extreme example, but you get what I mean. Then, so danger, then response. So doctors ABC, DRS, danger, response. So your first thing to do is see if they can respond. If they're responding, you're a little bit more reassured. If they're not responding, you're dealing with somebody who's essentially got what we call a reduced GCS, Glasgow Coma Score, and that's something that's very that would put you on high alert, because if somebody can't respond, what that could mean is that they've they're brain dead, or gone into a coma, and what that means is they may not be able to do things such as breathe for themselves. And as you can imagine, if you can't breathe for yourself, that's a pretty bad situation. Next, you shout for help. So in this situation, I mean, this was a televised event. There were hundreds of thousands of people watching. There was thousands of fans. Luckily, COVID is just about to be over. There were thousands of fans in the stadium. And there was a medical team, and they had all approached very quickly. So DRS. Then you go into your A, B, C, D, E. So your A is airway. Are they able to breathe by themselves? The reason it's structured this way is this is the order of things that normally will cause you to, if you are going to deteriorate and or die, this is the order. So, A, is he able to breathe for himself? Now, apparently he was able to breathe for himself. Okay, next step, B, breathing. Are they breathing particularly badly? Is there something blocking their ability to breathe? Do a chest examination. So what you would normally do on basic life support is you would do what we call a head tilt chin lift, which is where you put one of your hands on their head and you lift their chin up. The reason for that is get your tongue out of the way, and if you're not able to respond, that would mean that you might not have the ability to control the muscles in your tongue, and that might block your airway. Okay, once you do that, so what you do is you do head tilt chin lift, and you listen, and you put your head down next to their mouth and nose to see if you can feel them breathing, and you look down the chest to see if you can see the chest coming up and down. Okay, that would be B. And then you do C. So what is C? C is your cardiac examination, and this is where essentially our problem would arise in Eriksen. So in C, you would be feeling for a pulse. Now, apparently, initially, he did have a pulse. So they had done a cardiac examination, listened to his heart sounds, do his capillary refill time. So that's to see if your body is pumping the blood effectively around your body. And we're going to assume that these were all fine. Now, if you can feel the pulse, it normally also means, and it's strong, it means that your heart is still pumping fairly effectively. If you think about it, your pulse is just basically your heart pumping muscle through the pipes, and you feel it because they're bouncy pipes. Anyways, so you can feel a pulse. You think his blood pressure is okay, he's perfusing peripherally. Then D. So D is anything that would be disabling. So high fevers. Are they confused? Are they able to respond? Do they respond to pain? So I believe they had probably gotten to D, and then at that point, he's failed D. So what do you need to do? You need to look for ways to reverse it, things that could be causing it. In this case, this is a sports medical doctor. I'm presuming he probably has thought of hokum and may have stuck on C and basically needed to get a defibrillator. The reason why you want a defibrillator is if you believe that this patient has hokum and has gone into an arrhythmia. So like I said, you believe that this is a fairly fit, top flight athlete who has been in the team I support, Spurs. He's currently playing for Inter Milan, so he's fairly fit. So he's not got a lot of the things that would normally cause you to collapse. So this would be things like dehydration and whatever. He's not a little old lady who probably has not drunk enough water. He's a young, fit gentleman under the age of 35, and hokum is the highest cause of sudden cardiac death in people under the age of 35. It's fairly common actually, and actually, although you think of it quite rarely, it actually happens in 1 in every 500 people. So that's a prevalence rate of about 0.2%. Now, that's fairly scary if you think about it, because actually that's not as irregular as, for example, something like a genetic disease that you would never hear of, something like cystic fibrosis or something like that. So it's fairly common. So he probably had asked for a defibrillator. That sometimes takes a bit longer to actually arrive. And they didn't start CPR. So this is a criticism, and I believe it's a fair criticism, that you probably should have started CPR despite that. But CPR can be very traumatic, and if you don't think that they're acutely deteriorating, you may not choose to. the medical team did a great job. I'm not going to criticize them at all, and probably certainly did a better job than I ever could. So then he got defibrillated. So so we've explained why we do CPR, and then what next is why do we do defibrillation. So defibrillation is essentially and very much in the same vein. Have you tried turning it off and on again? That's basically what a defibrillator does. What it does is you deliver a high energy electrical shock to the heart. You stop it so that it can reset, because essentially what's happened is your heart has gone into panic mode and it's sending electrical signals all over the place and it's not pumping effectively. What defibrillation does is it shocks the heart and says stop, stop, and then after a bit it will recover, and hopefully, and as happened, he recovers. Anyways, like I said, I will link the cardiologist's video below. He does a much better job than me at explaining it, and we all, I hope Christian Eriksen the best. He's a very significant player in my life. He was there during Spurs' rise. I have some great memories of him playing in the Champions League, and taking our team from below Arsenal to above Arsenal. I've rattled on for quite a bit. I didn't actually expect me to talk for this long. So what we're going to do is we're going to collect this Eriksen. I'm going to make sure that I've been recording, because I've been at fault for not doing so, and we'll hold off the episode there. So next week what we're going to have from me is we're going to have all the cards that I've collected and the new final team that we're going to do, as well as the SBCs I've completed along the way. And then we're also going to talk a bit about what's going to happen perhaps next year, and what we are planning, both me and Julian, coming up. So here we go. Here's the man himself. Like I said, we wish him the best, and I hope he recovers very soon, and I hope him and his family are doing okay. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.